Alright, so we're trying something a little different for this video. We're doing a hands-free tripod recording, and the reason for that is that I wanted to be able to kind of show off what I've been doing with these relays as of lately. There's also a couple of new relays to be shown. In particular, we have this one here. It's hard to make out the screen, but what this is it's a timer relay or a delay relay. It can have a few functions actually, but for the purposes of this, it's to add a virtual shunt to coded pulls. Now, I'll demonstrate that later, but right now in the video, what I want to demonstrate is basically just how it will enable the sort of almost the virtual NAC here with like a high-low type setup, but when nothing has been received, everything is just off. So as soon as I give it some coding, now you'll notice it stays on for about 6 seconds and then turns off. Now that's the purpose of the delay relay. That is so that if I'm using a coded pool that does not have a shunt, it will be able to detect when the pool stops running by the fact that it's no longer pulsing the codes. Now, many coded pools have a shunt so that when it's pulled and running, it will close a contact and leave it closed for the duration of the, of the coding. Not all of them have that though. Out of the I don't even know how many I have now, probably 6 or 7 coded pools, I think 2 of them don't have it. So I would say they generally do have it, but there's occasionally some more basic pools, like the basic model Edwards 1250, which was normally closed and it did not have a shunt. So I think they relied more on the fact that it was normally closed to give some notion of supervision. So what I did to these relays is that some of them I was just chaining the input to another jack so you could kind of run it in series and break the connection with a coded pool to create a switch effect. Other relays actually have low voltage or high voltage, like a low or high trigger basically. Those ones that have the low or high trigger gave me an interesting idea, because what I realized I could do is essentially create a way to have almost a trigger bus or like a sync bus and pass through that trigger. As well as that, if I kind of just rely on using negative to switch things, then in general I can just kind of rely on that as a negative switched low trigger for kind of all the relays that support it. And so what does that mean in practice? Well, all these relays now have an input and an output jack for the switching. So this one might be a good one to see here. There is an input on the bottom, and when I unplug it, you'll see the light turns off, and now it's lit up again. And then likewise, whatever I'm plugging this into, I can't tell right now, but I'm sure it's lighting up and turning off. Oh, no, it wouldn't be because everything's turned off right now. So if I turn this on again and unplug it, you'll see this one is still running, and these ones follow when it's plugged in. But you see how it's actually disconnecting the ones over there as well. And the ones over there are doing, those right now are doing some other things. So I have low voltage, 5 volts, which is for this little bell and for the xylitone. And I also have 6 volts AC, which is for the Edwards cowbell and the Simplex 4048. Now, it should be noted, this relay does not have the sync bus. For this relay, it's just using the output of, I guess, this guy right here. This is the relay doing 24 volts right now. Just another thing to note, the reason there are so many relays here is they're all doing a different voltage. So, one relay is doing 24 volts, one relay is doing 12 volts, one is doing 6 volts AC, one is doing, or 5 volts, or 6 volts AC, yeah, and the other one is doing like 5 or 6 volts DC. So this one here is doing 24 volts. This one here is doing 12 volts, which is being reduced from the 24 volts with this little power supply. So as soon as I turn this on, you see this comes on to 12 volts. And then that's actually driving all the 12 volt lights here. So these lights here are all 12 volts. This here is acting as a running lamp, so this is indicating when this is triggered, and that's would almost be like your virtual shunt. Speaking of which, let's demonstrate that. So this is the output from the Edwards right here. And we're going to unplug the Deuce MC from the sync bus and plug in the Edwards instead. Now, since it's normally closed, you'll see it activated real quick, but since it's not doing anything, it will turn off after the timeout, which is 6 seconds. That would almost be like your supervision if this was a real setup, you know? So, all that said, Edwards is now driving the sync bus instead of the Deuce MC. So what happens when we pull the Edwards? I think we're coming around to the last coating. And now it should shut off. So, as you can see from that, the virtual shunt, when the Edwards was finished running, it counts down its timeout, and then it finishes up. So that is basically the purpose of the virtual shunt. It's to just let you do a high-low. I can use both the normally closed and normally open contacts, but it then turns it sort of off at the end. Now, if I want that sort of same functionality with these AC power supplies, or AC or DC, well, the low voltage DC one, then I would have to add an additional relay in front, which gets powered by this guy, and basically the same thing that's driving this lamp and driving this 12 volt power supply. You would then use that to drive an additional relay to cut off the power coming into this or this. Once you do that, then you can basically have a high-low type setup with a coded pull and even a virtual shunt if it doesn't have one. That is sort of the intention of this whole setup. I normally would not have all the relays set up at once. Normally I would have one doing the power cutoff for one of these relays. Usually it's this relay doing the cutoff for this one. And then, so basically this would connect to this for the power, and then this would do the coding with the sync bus. And that actually makes sense because this one does not support the sync bus. This was one of my older relays. This is a I think it's a 5 amp relay, but it does not support low voltage triggers. It only supports like 12 or 24 volts, which you can switch up and down with this little switch here. Some of these relays support full range. Like this guy over here supports all the way from 12 to 24 volts, no switching needed. So the switch on this one is just a power switch. That's another cool thing I could show you here real quick. If I activate this real quick, just disconnect this. Oh, I'm realizing that the power is coming from this now. There we go. Oop, didn't like that. Ooh. Okay, so what I wanted to show now so now that these are sort of disconnected, you can sort of see how they activate individually. So, trying to just find all my cords here. But essentially, when they're separated, you can turn them on and off individually. And I guess what I could show, in fact, that's more what I wanted to show, is just the fact that you can, let's plug these all back in. When this is running, this will do the Deuce MC again here. You can basically turn these off, and then they're no longer part of the sync bus kind of thing. Now obviously if some of them are normally closed or normally open, some of them might keep running, so I have to cut off the power to them. I have pass-through on these, so you don't have to do anything like the extra relay I mentioned. If it's simply coming straight from the input power, just cutting the power to the relay cuts the pass-through, so you don't have to have the extra relay for that. But in either case, the pass-through, even when these are off, still lets the signal pass through the sync bus. So, unplug the buzzer just so I don't get that buzzing. It's not just in my head. But yeah, what's cool about that is obviously you can just sort of enable or disable sections of the sync bus as you want to. And you could even do that with the noisy guys. So yeah, that is kind of the conclusion, I guess, of this setup. This is the sync bus relay setup. So yeah, until next time, folks. It's been fun.